quality of research, first and foremost, about that individual and about that company, and then your ability to concisely and creatively portray or make them realize that problem or opportunity may exist, and then how it is that you can help them. And I think it's easy to overcomplicate it, and I think it's easy to be lazy, but I think if you can do those things, you aren't going to go too far wrong.
Welcome to Rep Matters, a podcast for sales professionals who are eager to build their business acumen and become top performers. In each episode, your hosts, Zoya Segelbacher and Caroline Jones, explore the real-life experiences, obstacles, and triumphs of salespeople. With an emphasis on authenticity and storytelling, listeners gain valuable insights into the strategies, mindsets, and skills that drive success in sales. Let's get started.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Rep Matters. I'm Caroline.
And I'm Zoya.
And this episode is brought to you by Marketers in Demand. Marketers in Demand has in-depth videos, podcasts, and articles from some of B2B's most in-demand marketers. Today, our guest is Andy Laws, joining us all the way from London. Andy is a former elite-level sportsman, Senior Business Development Manager at Braze, who grew the EMEA and APAC BDR team from 2 reps to 20 plus, and he's the co-founder of Rev Rocket. Andy, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm humbled and honored to be on with you.
We're so excited. Just earlier, we were talking about how in this episode, we have 3 time zones happening. I'm over here in California. Kara.
I'm in Japan, so it's the next day for me. Future looks bright.
And it's 10 p.m. for me in London. I've had a late night coffee to get myself ready to come and have a talk with you guys, but super excited to be on.
Yeah, we're so stoked. So, Andy, you and I worked together at Braze. And when you first started, you were an SDR in 4 years? You've seen the company go through an IPO. You've been promoted multiple times. And so before we get into the nitty gritty of it all, really, of your journey and of these really amazing teachings that you have to share with us and that you're sharing all the time with your community and with your mentees, let's start with the IPO. Can you walk us through what that day was like?
It was so much fun. I'll be honest. It was a heap of fun to have. It was just after or just towards the end of COVID. And, we hadn't had the entirety of the Braze organization together really in one place since before COVID, right? So to have, everyone come together as a community, first and foremost, just the London group and the London cohort of Brazers, to have everyone together to celebrate was kind of mind blowing because we hadn't actually seen how much we'd grown as an organization, even regionally, for the best part of, 2 years or so. So to have everyone together and kind of see that growth was an amazing experience. And then to share that, really significant moment and milestone with the rest of the global offices as well was just an incredible experience. And, even Zoya, when we were working together, the North Star for our organization was always to go public. And then to see that come to fruition and be a realization of a lot of hard work was an amazing day. So yeah, there was a lot of celebrations into the early hours of the morning and probably on to the following day and the following day after that. But yeah, it was an amazing experience and something that I'll never forget for sure.
So special. Yeah, I was not there for it. I'm so jealous. It sounds like an amazing time.
Yeah, it was awesome.
And so you came from a background of professional sports. Walk us through how you went from pro sports to SaaS sales.
Yeah, good question. So yeah, I retired from elite level cricket at the ripe old age of 21. I'm English, right? So quintessentially British, played cricket, most obvious thing for me to do. But yeah, retired at the ripe old age of 21, realized that I needed to go back to school. So I studied for a Bachelor of Science in sports coaching originally, thinking that I would transition straight from my playing career and go into coaching the sport, try and progress through and become an elite level coach. really enjoyed it, but realized very quickly there was probably going to be a ceiling to my career. I hadn't played international sport. I hadn't played at the very, very highest level. And also started to realize that I had this kind of like inkling and interest in business as well. So I ended up going back and doing a master's in advertising and marketing. Did marketing for a couple of years at a multinational. That was a heap of fun. And then I found this company called Braze on the internet after my partner, who I'm still with, was a sales development rep at the time in another tech startup. She said, you really should give this a go with your sporting background, your competitive nature, your drive, so on and so forth. And so I joined this company that I found on the internet called Braze, and thankfully I'd strapped myself to the right rocket ship. I had some good tutelage along the way from people like you, Zoya, and yeah, I'm here I am now, 4 years on.
Wow. Andy, I've heard you talk about your mental process transitioning away from sports. Can you tell us a little bit about the barriers and the challenges that you faced transitioning out of professional sports and into the business world?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think you can speak to almost any elite level athlete as they come to the end of their career, whether it's something that they've elected to do, or they've had that thrust upon them for one reason or another, whether that be injuries or, the clubs or the franchises or whatever it is that they've decided that, they're not required anymore. To have that taken away from you when you've spent, probably 2/3 of your life working towards that goal, and really all is that kind of way of life, I think is a really difficult thing to comprehend. And there's not many athletes that get to go out on their own terms, having achieved what they wanted to achieve. Even the most like world-class performers, that very rarely happens. So I think the transition, the most difficult bit for me was identity loss. I'd always been known as, the kid that played cricket, and, locally was, fairly well known. I was on the radio and, seen on the TV, and there's clips of me on YouTube and, all that kind of stuff, right? And all of a sudden overnight, none of that matters anymore. And people actually just don't really care. And you kind of have to get over that and realize that you're much more than, just the athlete that you were, and you have to kind of re-find yourself and kind of like reestablish what your life goals are going to be and what your purpose is going to be, and what other interests that you might have. And candidly, it probably took me best part of half a decade to really kind of navigate through that. And I had spells of anxiety and depression. I had issues with painkillers. It was a pretty tricky period, and it wasn't until I got into kind of my late 20s that I really started to work through, okay, this SaaS space is pretty cool. And, I quite like this kind of sales development, sales space. There's a lot of synergies between what I was doing for a large part of my life, into elite level sport versus now obviously working in sales. And yeah, it's a tricky thing to work through. And thankfully I had a lot of very good people around me at various different points in time to help me along the way and kind of rediscover my verve for life, really.
What are some of those lessons or mindsets from sport that have served you well moving into business?
Yeah, I think there's probably 2 or 3 that spring to mind, right? Like the first one is, I know what it takes to be a high performer. Like I know what it takes to be part of the 1%. And, invariably, people always see the glory, right? And people always see you winning trophies or signing that big contract, or in the sales environment, it's landing that big commission or that logo or that promotion. But what they don't appreciate is all the 1%ers and all the hard work that goes in behind the scenes, like all of the ugly stuff that most people don't want to do. Like that's the stuff that really gets me out of bed. Like I love the day-to-day grind. And it was those early morning treadmill sessions that I used to make myself vomit. It was the weight sessions. It was the additional training and things like that I did that, I really, really enjoyed that process. And all I really did was transition that over into my life, firstly as an SDR, as a BDR, right? And, there's a lot of people that get 3, 6, 9 months in and realize that actually they don't like the hard work, or they don't like the long hours, or they don't like the bits of the job that, they feel like they're under pressure or they're putting themselves in a position to fail. Like that was all the stuff that I really leaned into and kind of made sure that it was a super strength for me. I think the other thing I would say is I'm insatiably competitive. Whilst losing is an important part of the learning process, I certainly don't enjoy it. And certainly understanding what it takes to have a competitive edge has definitely been beneficial for me. Or, firstly, with all those other people that are around me, even though they're on the same team as me, I'm competing against them and I'm competing against myself every day. And then the other thing I would say is like having a really healthy relationship with failure. I think, going through my teenage years, I had a really unhealthy relationship with failure. And at different points in time, it became really destructive and it got in the way of me probably progressing as quickly as I could have done. But actually, when I got into my late teens and early 20s, kind of through that like really elite level part of my sporting career, I got a lot more comfortable with it. And I saw a lot more people around me who were very comfortable with failure as well. Like the top guys, like there's different levels to the game. Like, and I was down here and there was some guys up here like playing international sport. Their relationship with failure was incredible. Like they were seeking failure on a daily basis to make sure that they were obviously trying to find those incremental gains. And it was at that moment in time that I realized that if I was able to adopt even a fraction of that mindset, then I was going to be in a really healthy position for my own sporting career, but whatever career I then took after that. So yeah, I've really kind of harnessed that embracing of failure too. So probably 3 things that really stand out from my sporting days, I guess.
Yeah, I love that. I love how you describe it as a relationship with failure. Like it doesn't have to be anything more than that. Like it's something that exists. And you build your life around it or accommodate it, right? It seems like it's working for you because you have a very impressive track record as a coach, as a leader, and you speak a lot about your track record as an SDR as well. Can you tell us a little bit about that? There's like one metric in particular that like I've seen you reference.
I'm trying to think which particular metric you're touching on, but yeah, I think I came into Braze at a really fortunate time. Like I'm very cognizant that there is always an element of timing when you're thinking about success. And 2 things really stand out in terms of my entry to the organization and my entry into business development at Braze. The first one was like we were in a gold rush when it came to cross-channel marketing and mobile marketing, and we were really the strongest challenger player, doing things slightly differently to some of the more traditional players in the market. And we were able to really take advantage of that during the kind of like year and a half or so that I was a business development rep. And I was able to really lean into that and apply it as a strength. The other thing I would say is, we had a really lean team in EMEA when I first started. So I had pretty much entire ownership of the enterprise TAM that was available in EMEA, right? So I had pretty much anything I wanted to go at, rather than having, major confines to any territory that I could work. And you could argue, there's upsides and downsides to that. But at the same time, I appreciate that having that degree of flexibility and freedom to kind of roam around and find where the opportunities were was equally a massive upside that I was able to take advantage of. So yeah, to book as many meetings as I did, to generate to qualify and source the amount of ACV that I was able to do, and then to get my name attached to a number of really cool logos that are now customers is obviously amazing, and I'm really proud of those achievements.
Yeah, they're amazing.
Yeah, breaking into a new territory is a really exciting but difficult challenge, I think, for an SDR. A lot of SDRs start their career, and maybe at that 1.5 year mark or earlier, unfortunately, I think, they want to start making moves. They want to start growing in their career. How did you stick it out for 18 months or so in the BDR role? What was your relationship like with patients at that time?
Not great, I'll be honest. I was banging the door down at 12 months. And I think, my general experience is somewhere between like 8 and 12 months. Most BDRs have probably had about enough of picking the phone up and making that many cold calls in a day, or sending that many emails, or getting that many rejections in a week. So I kind of get that, right? And I think the turning point for me was when I really wrapped some rigor around what my career development plan needed to look like and what direction I really needed to take. I think certainly from where I was at 12 months to where I got to at the point at which where I was promoted, that kind of that final 6 months of my tenure was probably the most difficult, first and foremost, because I had to continue delivering my number, but then also kind of work on the upskilling and improvements for my readiness into my next role. But equally went the fastest because I was as busy as I was, and I was pressing towards a very, very clear goal with a deadline associated to it. And I'm also thankful for the additional time I had as well, because it allowed me to make sure that when I went into that role, I was going to be successful. And I see in a lot of certainly younger organizations anyway, that, you know, I have either friends that work there, or that I've done some form of advisory or consulting for, or, you know, I've just, you know, spoken to one or two people. They can be a bit, you know, giddy and premature in promoting people, or I see reps get promoted too early into account executive roles or whatever it might be, and they end up exiting the business another 6-9 months later because they just haven't been ready to make that jump. They haven't laid the foundations even for the BDR role, let alone the role that they're then going on and moving into. And that's been a huge learning for us here at Braze as well, right? Which is, let's make sure that we get people, you know, 95% of the way there before we put them into that new role. You know, they might have been deserving of it at the 12-month mark, right? But we want to make sure that we've got longevity for that individual's career within our organization, and we're making sure that we're setting them up for success as well. And that was very much the case for me too. And it was just a case of putting some structure around what I was doing before I made the move.
I think you had an important relationship that gave you some feedback around that time. And maybe you both worked for Wendy Henkemeyer at the same time. She told you something along the lines of, get off BDR Island. I'm dying to know, where is this place? And what did she mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, me on an island at any time is not a good thing, given how fair-haired I am and fair-skinned I am. Like, I had a sun cream sponsor as an elite level athlete for a reason. I'd much rather have been like a BDR mountain or something where I wasn't going to get burnt. But in terms of her guidance to me, my role at the time was always enterprise, and I kind of moved into this more global strategic account type role where we were going after these obviously, you know, huge logos. And one of the things that was most apparent was I was fairly siloed, firstly within like the BDR function. You know, I'd go to Zoya and I'd go to Zana and I'd go to other business development reps for advice, but I wasn't really leveraging some of the other people in the organization that were far more intelligent than I will ever be, right? And her point to me was, you know, when you're working these really, really big accounts, you making sure that you're leveraging all of the resources available to you, firstly to, you know, upskill your own knowledge. So, you know, go and speak to customer success, go and speak to account managers that work on similar accounts, go and spend time with, you know, solutions consultings or sales engineers or whatever you want to call them, and get an understanding of what the true benefit of the technology is for a specific account, or what are the use cases that you're trying to portray the value of, right? And then the other part of it is, you know, where do you think you can open the door vicariously through other people? Is that through senior leadership? Is that through team link intros? Is that through, you know, previous customers of Braze that have now moved into that organization? And her point to me was just like, you really need to bolster your interconnectivity across our organization to accelerate the results of you getting into these accounts. And as soon as I did that, unsurprisingly, doors started to you know, open up for me pretty quickly and pretty successfully. So yeah, it was about as good advice as I could have got, and it's still advice that I use to this day with my BDR. So shout out Wendy.
Shout out Wendy. Wendy was my first BDR manager, actually, at Medallia, even before Braze.
OG.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about Braze, massive impact. Your team is doing really well. It's exciting. I love that. I want to talk about Rev Rocket now, though.
Exciting.
Yeah, exciting. So, I mean, let's start with, tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, look, I think Rev Rocket was really born out of just a lot of conversations that I was having informally with individual reps and also with organizations. You know, I've been really thankful to learn a lot over the last 4 years from a lot of very incredible people, you know, whether that be people that I've directly worked with, or whether that's people that I've looked on and admired in the Braze organization. And naturally, as you kind of start to grow roots within the sales development space and in the SaaS space, more and more people have kind of popped up and asked questions and had queries and sought assistance. Yeah, look, I saw an opportunity along with my partner Selena to say, look, what happens if we just put something out there to say, is anyone interested? Is there anything that we can kind of pay back and help and support either individuals or organizations, and it's been really well received so far. It's been fun kind of meeting more people and kind of troubleshooting some problems.
For people listening, what can you tell us about what you offer at Rev Rocket?
Yeah, sure. So there's a couple of different streams to it, really. The first one is supporting early stage startups with how it is that they should be trying to structure their revenue development or pipeline development teams. So that can be anything from, what does hiring need to look like, through to, what do your targets and compensation need to look like. It can be things like definition of ICP and making sure that there's value propositions and quality messaging that's wrapped around who it is that you're trying to communicate with, all the way through to, supporting individual reps or running cohorts of coaching programs, either for organizations or for, people that are just looking to go the extra mile with their own development. So still early days. We're still trying to work through where it is that we can add the most value. But yeah, we've got a handful of people that we're working with on a few different bits and pieces, and it's been good to kind of get stuck into where they're at and what they're trying to achieve, and supporting their growth as they move forwards.
That's awesome. I think it's a really interesting time when you're thinking of, and talking to your customers about pipeline generation. There's a lot of talk about what interrupts the pattern, right? What's going to catch someone's attention? And I'm sure that changes, right? Whatever is new is going to get an open on an email. What's something that, in your opinion, never changes? What's always a good practice in outbound outreach?
Knowing your prospect. I think there's actually a really low barrier to quality outreach. And I've been guilty of this in the past, but at the same time, I think the proven way to capture someone's attention is to inherently understand the individual that you're reaching out to and the problem or opportunity that they're currently facing. And that comes down to quality of research, first and foremost, about that individual and about their company, and then your ability to concisely and creatively portray or make them realize that problem or opportunity may exist, and then how it is that you can help them. And I think it's easy to overcomplicate it, and I think it's easy to be lazy. But I think if you can do those things, you aren't going to go too far wrong.
Yeah, words to live by. So I'll kind of flip the question around. What has changed, let's say, in like the last 3 to 4 years? What trends are you seeing now that you weren't really seeing back then?
Yeah, I think probably the hottest topic, and one that I'm still really trying to get up to speed on, is the role that AI is going to play in pipeline generation, and where it's going to, support reps currently, and where it, there's obviously that hot debate as to whether it's going to, completely replace reps as well, right? And, when, I entered into the business development space, everything was a manual process, partly because of like the maturity of the business that I joined, and partly because, AI really wasn't a thing back then. That makes me feel really old, even though it's only 4 years ago. But whereas in reality now, it's a case of like, right, okay, we know AI is going to be around. We know it's here to supplement and create efficiencies for reps in the short term. So how is it that we're looking to potentially harness that for the betterment of, the reps and also for results as well, right? So I think that's probably been the biggest change and the biggest shift that I've seen in probably the last 6 to 12 months. And it'll be really interesting to see kind of how it plays out, and, whether particular business development organizations across different companies are able to leverage it in ways that really provides meaningful competitive advantage. But I think like the foundations and the fundamentals that still exist, I think it's just going to be interesting to see how we harness technology over the next 12 to 24 months across the board.
Yeah. What can reps do now to economy proof themselves, right? There's a lot of chatter about how much exactly will AI impact the SDR, BDR profession. If you were a BDR today who's maybe earlier on in their career, what would you say to them to make sure that they're continuing to upskill themselves and make themselves an attractive candidate?
I think this is a really important question, right? My personal belief, certainly in the next like 5 years or so, is like AI is not going to replace the sales development function, the business development function. I think what it is going to do is it's going to weed out those people that haven't adopted AI machine learning into their ways of working. And, in the same way that when I started, or even before then, like having an understanding of how it is that you use certain softwares, or that you have an appreciation, understanding of the power of social media. Like 15 years ago, 30 years ago, social media didn't even exist. If I told my parents as a 10-year-old I was going to be a social media manager, they would just said, what is that, right? Whereas, social media has changed the way that we communicate, but it hasn't replaced any other forms of communication. Like there's still, lots of other mediums that still exist, that existed, back when my parents were in the main part of their career. So I would just give the advice, and I'm going through this process as well at the moment about educating myself as to, what AI technology is out there first and foremost, and what technologies do I think I need to start getting comfortable with in order to continue to progress my career forwards, and for a BDR to progress their career forwards. What are the technologies that are being adopted by lots of business development organizations, and how can they get their hands on those or do some reading around them, so that when it comes to interviews or it comes to entering into a role, they feel comfortable with adopting those technologies.
In addition to technology usage, Andy, I think I've heard you talk about your annual review of what gives you energy and what takes energy away from you. You do kind of like a status check. Can you tell us a little bit about that process? And I'd love to hear today what you're feeling like gives you energy, and what you feel drains you these days.
Yeah, sure. I think one of the things that has become most apparent through my 20s and into my early 30s, without giving my age away, is my personality has changed quite considerably through that time period. And doing that stock take as to kind of where I'm at as an individual and what it is that I'm doing and where I'm spending my time. And, to your point, like what are the things that are giving me energy versus detracting energy, has been a really helpful exercise to go through. It's something that I've done over the last 2 or 3 years. I'm going to shout my current manager, Del Patara, out for kind of making me go through this process on an annual basis. And really the purpose of it is to just try and keep myself aligned to who I am, and also what direction I really think my career should be going in. And I have aspirations and, where I think I want to go. And then I get 12 months down the line and, there's certain things that perhaps have changed in my interests and my personality, and maybe even where my goals are at. And then I do that reappraisal. And all of a sudden I realize maybe that route wasn't the right, or isn't the right route for me to go down. What's the route that I do want to take, or where do I need to redress balance in my life so that I spend more time doing the things that I enjoy, right? And I would say that we're all here to have a good time, right? And spend less time doing things we don't enjoy. So yeah, it's been a really helpful thing for me to go through. I think if I was to kind of give you some examples of probably the last like 12 to 18 months, some of the realizations I had, I'd always thought about going down the account executive route, right? And I realized very quickly that actually I didn't enjoy being customer facing that much. And that surprised me, but I found that it became a real energy drainer for me in terms of, having to prep for the meetings, delivering the meetings, doing the debriefs, like having that individual number to hit. I bizarrely enjoy having a larger team number than I do having an individual smaller number. Make sense of that. And then the things that I really do enjoy and get energy from is seeing other people grow, seeing other people fulfill their goals, seeing people get promoted. We were fortunate enough to promote a couple of people last week, and the amount of joy that gave me was exponentially greater than me going and closing some deal and earning a commission check for myself. So there's some examples of some things that are probably maybe slightly surprising, and certainly surprised myself at different times in terms of like what kind of gets me up in the morning, and also the things that actually kind of drain me.
Thank you for sharing that. This is probably one of the most important things that I would want a BDR, SDR to hear is the AE route is not the only route. Account executive is not necessarily the only way. And it's really worthwhile to stop, pause, and think about the parts of the job that you really enjoy and are good at, like where your skills meet the market need or the need within your organization.
Yeah. And I think there's a timing element there too, right? And, if I consider, I pretty much had an annual conversation about making that transition across to account executive, and at no point has it ever really made sense. Like, firstly, from like really where I was enjoying my role and not enjoying my role, but also what's going on in my life, right? And, when I first had that conversation, we were entering into COVID, and I wasn't sure whether going down the account executive route during COVID was going to be a great move. We've had other macroeconomic situations, and we're now in a bear market. I've taken on a mortgage in that time as well. And, obviously from an account executive perspective, you're a lot more fallible in that role than you probably are in a leadership role, as long as you can deliver value on the leadership side. So it never really felt, or it hasn't really ever felt like it was the right time, as much as it wasn't necessarily the best fit for my personality and my skill set. So, there's a couple of different layers that I would always encourage people to look at. And the other thing I would say is, like, you can earn really good money without being an account executive. Like, that's the other thing I would say, right? You can earn really well, going down the leadership route, or, going into other different departments. You don't have to go down the account executive route to make good money. So that's one of the other realizations that, I've had probably over the last like 18 to 24 months as I've progressed my leadership career, is I've been able to probably scale quicker than some of my counterparts from a remuneration standpoint too.
I mean, it's really clear that you are doing what you love, like the quality that you bring to your LinkedIn presence, to your community, to Braze. So it sounds like that reflecting is really working. I'm curious what advice you have to other people, leaders. Specifically, let's say SDR leaders.
Yeah, I posted about something like a week or so ago, and I think I actually referenced it earlier, right? When we had a couple of reps get promoted, and it's very easy to lose sight of why you do the job. And I think in a lot of organizations, there's obviously naturally huge scrutiny around pipeline generation, right? There's a number there to be hit. You need to drive, opportunities and meetings so that business can get closed. But I think if you were to really like dial in on your purpose and really the stuff that also gets me excited, it's about firstly hiring talented people and doing that talent identification piece. And I think that's a skill in itself. So getting that right early on is really important, but then really dialing in on the people that you're working with and developing them on a daily basis. And ultimately the pipeline becomes a byproduct of the talent development, right? And my advice to other sales development leaders is really get to know your reps, and by that I mean the actual people, not the reps. I've been really fortunate to get to know some amazing people at Braze, and some amazing young people at Braze. That again makes me sound a little bit old, but take due care for those individuals, have that kind of layer and depth and quality to the relationships, because that's the thing that's really going to make the difference when it comes to the pipe number. Because if you've inherently got that additional level of trust with those reps, and they're willing to work with you, and they're willing to learn from you, and they're willing to fail for you and with you, that's then going to really be the catalyst for them going on and progressing their own careers. But it's also going to allow you to progress yours as you consistently hit the number and get people promoted and source close one business and all that other good stuff that the rest of the business looks at.
I love that you
Dropping
mentioned
gems.
Yeah, seriously. I'm like, do we have another hour? I will not go on for another hour. Don't worry, Andy. But I love that you said, yeah, you need to go to bed.
It's bedtime.
I know. We need you to be fresh for tomorrow's leadership challenges you'll face. You mentioned letting reps fail with you. And I don't think a lot of leaders make space for that on their team. They might say it, right? But they don't really want someone missing their number. How do you create a safe space for your teams to try something new, to fail, and to maintain that, I think you've referred to it as like emotional equilibrium in the job?
It's hard, and I can't sit here and say that I've got it right all the time, and I still make that mistake even to this day, right? I think the first thing is you need to have confidence in communication, right? Which is and be consistent with that communication too, and that confidence and communication consistency over a period of time, I think then forms the foundation for that kind of culture that you're trying to build with that cohort of people. And I think also the response to any failure is really important as well, and knowing when to intervene and when actually just to kind of let things play out, I think is also important. You know, there's going to be times when actually you do need to catch people before they fail, because it's going to be, you know, too devastating or too impactful either for, you know, the team and your number, or actually for the individual in question as well. Like, you know, there's some individuals that aren't going to have a healthy relationship with failure. And, you know, when they do fail, you know, it needs to be small, really small failures rather than something that's bigger. Whereas there's other people in our team that, you know, I can let run for quite some time and probably make a mess of something on a larger scale and still be okay and learn from it and kind of come out the other side. So I think there's nuances to it with individuals, but I think collectively understanding that the culture that you set up front and also your response after any kind of form of failure, whether that be collective or individual, is really important. So being deliberate about how you carry yourself, what language you use, and when it is that you choose to intervene are all really important factors when you're thinking about how it is that you try and cultivate that culture with the group.
Yeah, it comes down to really getting to know your reps, like you mentioned, taking a tailored approach.
Yeah, and understanding their background and their history as well, right? And what might lead into their, you know, their relationship with failure. There's going to be individuals that, you know, have had, you know, great successes through their, you know, teenage years and through their university years, and they're incredibly confident for one reason or another, and actually they can, you know, take a setback really easily. And there's going to be other people in your team that, you know, you get to know them, and maybe they got bullied at school, or maybe they had, you know, mental health issues at university, or, you know, they've, you know, lost a family member recently, or whatever it might be. Like the number of, you know, reps that the majority of sales development leaders will work with who lose a close family member for the first time during their tenure as a business development rep is scarily high, right? And understanding at that point too, like, do I need to continually try and pump this person's tires up, right? And avoid those failures so that they, you know, we're able to build their confidence in their mood and how it is that they're operating, versus, you know, those individuals that, you know, are in a good place and can probably take those setbacks a little bit easier.
Great points. Thank you so much. We are unfortunately coming up on time, so we do like to end these conversations by asking each of our guests the same two questions. And the first is a little fun. Can you tell us about one of your first big commission check purchases?
Ooh. I'd say my house. That was, I mean, I didn't earn that much money off my commission, but I used all of the available commission I had to put down the deposit on my house in conjunction with my partner, Selena. So yeah, a pretty sizable life moment for me and my partner. So, and I certainly wouldn't have been able to get the deposit together without having entered the SaaS space and without having, you know, obviously earned some commission. So I would probably say that's the most memorable way I've spent my commission.
Congrats, by the way. Yeah. We didn't say that earlier. Congrats on the house, on the mortgage.
It's stressful. It's overrated, honestly.
Yeah, I know. I always feel a bit funny saying that. Congrats on your mortgage. But no, it's a huge life decision. A lot of thought goes into it. Anytime you make a big life decision, I think it earns a congrats. The second question that we like to ask is, what are you either promoting internally or selling externally that you want to, and this could be something we talked about earlier. I know we talked about Rev Rocket, or it could be something silly, right? But what are you selling?
Yeah, thanks for asking that question. That's the whole reason I came on this show. No, I'm joking. There's a couple of things, right? Like obviously there's the Rev Rocket piece. So, you know, if you're a VP of sales, you're a co-founder or CRO of a relatively young organization, you're thinking about how it is that you're going to generate pipeline, you know, reach out to either Selena or myself, and we'll gladly have a conversation with you about how it is that Rev Rocket and our services might be able to support. And selfishly on my side, I have some digital resources that are readily available for people to download. So there's an actionable SDR playbook, which is a number of frameworks and resources that really are there to create some efficiencies for SDRs and create some additional structure for people. And there's a couple of ebooks as well. One's revolving around ChatGPT or Bard prompts that you can use, again, to accelerate results for yourself and maybe save yourself a little bit of additional time when it comes to account research, prospect research, market research, all that kind of stuff. And another one with AE BDR best practices. So they're all available via various links on my LinkedIn profile if anyone is listening and wants to check those out. So thank you for giving me the airtime to promote myself. My head is now way too big to get through the door.
That is a classic British response. You're on a call. Wait, I'll speak for myself. I'm an American who loves a little self-promotion, so toot that horn. I'll make you do it one more time. Give us the plugs, like URLs. Where can we find you, Andy, on LinkedIn? Tell us those details.
Yeah, everything's on LinkedIn right now. So go check me out on LinkedIn. I think I'm Andy Laws. I'm the albino one. My mustache doesn't feature on my LinkedIn profile, but maybe it should be updated. There'll be a Rev Rocket website coming soon. But yeah, if you want to get hold of me, ping me on LinkedIn, and all my digital ebooks and stuff like that are on LinkedIn too.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Andy. It's been a really good time.
Thanks for coming on, Andy.
I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Rep Matters, the podcast for sales professionals who become top performers. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow Rep Matters wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, or access all episodes at marketersindemand.com/repmatters. See you next time.